The plate smashed against the wall, just inches from my head. Pieces of porcelain fell to the floor like angry tears. I said, "Get out!" Maria yelled, already reaching for another plate. "Leo is in charge now. We don't need you anymore." I stood my ground, watching my stepmother's face twist with rage. Behind her, my stepbrother Leo smirked, wearing my dad's old chef's coat. It used to fit my father perfectly, but on Leo, it hung loose. The name, Rossi, was stitched in faded gold thread across the pocket. My name is Bella Rossi, and until 2 months ago, I was the sous chef at Rossi's, the Italian restaurant my father built from nothing. I had worked there for 15 years, starting as a dishwasher at 13, learning every recipe, every technique, every secret that made our food special. But now, Dad was gone, and with him, everything I had worked for. "You can't do this," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Dad wanted me to run the restaurant. Everyone knows that." Maria laughed, a sharp and cruel sound. "Everyone knows? Where's the proof?" "The will leaves everything to me, and I say Leo is in charge now. You're just a worker, and you're fired." I looked at Leo, who was leaning against the prep station like he owned the place. He had shown up 6 months ago, right after Dad got sick. Maria's son from her first marriage, suddenly interested in the family business after ignoring it for years. "You don't even know how to cook," I said to him. "You've never worked a day in this kitchen." He shrugged, adjusting my father's coat. "I'll figure it out. How hard can it be? Follow the recipes, plate it nicely, and make money. Simple. Simple." That word hit me like another thrown plate. He had no idea what running Rossi's really meant, waking up before dawn to pick the best ingredients, spending hours prepping food, knowing the secret family recipes, and building relationships with suppliers. "The recipes," I said slowly. "You think you can just follow Dad's recipes?" Maria's smile faltered slightly. "Of course, we have them written down. We don't need you." "Those aren't the real recipes," I said, seeing her face go pale. "Dad never wrote them down. He taught them to me, step by step, over years. What you have are the basic versions we give to prep cooks." "You're lying," Leo snapped, but I saw doubt in his eyes. "Am I?" I challenged. "Try making Dad's marinara sauce from those cards. See if it tastes the same, or the tiramisu that won best dessert in Chicago 3 years in a row. Good luck with that." Maria stormed toward me and grabbed my arm. "You think you're so smart? We'll figure it out. Now, get out of my restaurant before I call the police." I pulled my arm free and stood tall. "Your restaurant? Everything here, every dish, every technique, every secret that makes this place special, came from Dad, from our family, not yours." "Your family?" Maria's voice dripped with venom. "I was his wife. You're just his daughter from his first marriage. I have the papers, the will, everything. You have nothing." The words hurt, but I didn't let them see my tears. Instead, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my father's lucky coin, a 1943 steel penny he carried every day since opening the restaurant. "Dad gave me this the night before he died," I said quietly. "Told me to keep it safe, that I'd know when to use it. I didn't understand then, but I do now." Maria's eyes locked onto the coin. "That belongs to the restaurant. Give it here." I closed my fingers around it and stepped back toward the door. "You have the restaurant, Maria, but Dad left me something more valuable than a building or a name. When you figure out what that is, you'll know where to find me." I walked out of Rossi's for the last time, ignoring Maria's shouts behind me. The late afternoon sun painted the Chicago streets gold, the same color as the thread on my father's coat. Tears finally came as I reached my car, but I wiped them away. Dad had taught me more than recipes. He taught me patience. He taught me persistence. He taught me planning. And most of all, he taught me that sometimes, you have to lose everything, to come back stronger. I started the car, watching Leo and Maria argue through the restaurant window. They thought they had won, that they had taken everything from me. But they had no idea what was coming. 3 months later, standing in my tiny apartment kitchen, I stirred the marinara sauce on the stove. The rich, familiar smell filled the air, reminding me of the mornings I spent cooking with Dad. I had learned every step, every secret, straight from him. My phone buzzed, a message from Na, my best friend. She had worked at Rossi's for 10 years before Maria fired her, too. "It's bad, Bella, really bad. They lost the Rossini wedding booking. I wasn't surprised. The Rossinis had celebrated every special occasion at Rossi's for 20 years, but ever since Maria put Leo in charge, customers had been leaving. His sloppy versions of Dad's recipes weren't fooling anyone. Another text popped up. Maria's desperate, third chef this month, nothing's working. I smirked, stirring the sauce again. Let them panic, the timing was perfect. On the counter sat the lucky steel penny Dad had given me. Next to it was an old leather notebook. I had found it the day after his funeral, hidden in his recipe box. Inside, I discovered two things. The real recipes, written in Dad's careful handwriting. The deed to a small storefront. For my Isabella, Dad had written, sometimes you have to lose a battle to win the war. When the time comes, you'll know what to do. The space had been empty for years, but Dad had kept paying the rent, planning for the future, even as his health failed. Now, after months of hard work, it was almost ready. The call. My phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. This is Isabella Rossi, I answered, already guessing who it was. A smooth voice replied, Miss Rossi, this is James Wheeler from the Chicago Restaurant Association. I'm calling about the nomination. I gripped the phone tighter. Yes? The committee reviewed your application for the Rising Star Chef competition. We're intrigued by your concept, a modern take on traditional Italian cuisine. I glanced around my test kitchen, at the dishes I had been perfecting, my own twist on Dad's classics, honoring tradition while embracing something new. That's right, I said, everything made from scratch, using techniques passed down for generations. Interesting, Wheeler said, especially given your history at Rossi's. I understand things have changed there recently. You could say that. Well, Miss Rossi, we'd like to invite you to compete. The event is in 6 weeks. The winner, as you know, receives major press coverage and investment funding. A smile spread across my face. I'll be there. The downfall of Rossi's. The next morning, my phone buzzed again. Nah, you won't believe this. Leo tried making your dad's osso buco for a food critic. It was a disaster. The review goes live tomorrow. Perfect. By the next day, the Chicago Tribune's review was everywhere. A pale imitation of its former glory. Whatever magic made Rossi's special is gone, replaced by mediocrity and pretension. I was in my new kitchen when Maria finally called. We need to talk, she said, her voice stiff. About what? The recipes, the real ones. Name your price. I laughed softly. They're not for sale, Maria. Neither is Dad's legacy. Don't be stupid, she snapped. This is business. Everything has a price. Not everything, I said, but don't worry, you'll be seeing me soon enough. Then I hung up. The Rising Star competition was 5 weeks away. And I had a point to prove. The competition. The grand ballroom at the Palmer House was packed with Chicago's top chefs and food critics. 8 cooking stations lined the room. Mine was directly across from the judges' table. I tied on my apron, simple black, no name, no logo, just Dad's steel penny, now pinned to my chest, catching the light. A judge approached and glanced at my setup. Chef Rossi, he said, your menu concept is reimagined Italian classics. I met his eyes and smiled. You haven't seen anything yet. I nodded and arranged my ingredients, my father's recipes, but with my own modern twist. The judge's eyes widened. Your father? Marco Rossi? Before I could answer, loud voices interrupted. Maria and Leo stormed in. Maria's face was red with anger. She can't compete, Maria shouted, pointing at me. Those recipes belong to us. The room fell silent. Head Judge Wheeler frowned. Mrs. Rossi, this is a private event. If you have a complaint, I have proof. Maria waved a folder in the air. These documents show that I own Marco's recipes. I kept cooking, staying calm. Everything was going exactly as planned. Mrs. Rossi, Wheeler said, this competition is about original dishes. Isabella's menu is inspired by her father's work, but these are her own creations. I finally looked up. Let them stay, I said, turning back to my cooking. Let them watch. Wheeler hesitated, then nodded. Security led Maria and Leo to seats near the judges. For the next 2 hours, I cooked with complete focus, just like my father taught me. I transformed his marinara sauce with roasted cherry tomatoes, his osso buco, I reimagined it with short ribs and elegant plating. For my final course, I presented a deconstructed tiramisu, each piece arranged beautifully. The judges gasped, even Maria was silent. This. Wheeler took another bite and closed his eyes. It's Marco's tiramisu, only better, familiar, but completely new. I smiled and touched the steel penny pinned to my apron. My father taught me that tradition isn't about staying the same, it's about growing and evolving. The judges whispered among themselves, then Wheeler stood. Ladies and gentlemen, our winner, Chef Isabella Rossi. Applause filled the room, cameras flashed. From the corner of my eye, I saw Maria and Leo sneaking toward the exit. But I wasn't finished. I stepped up to the microphone. 3 months ago, I lost my place in my father's restaurant, but he left me something even greater, his knowledge, his passion, and his dream of moving forward. I looked around the room, then smiled. That's why I'm proud to announce my new restaurant, Nuovo Rossi. Not a copy of the old place, but a continuation of my father's legacy, a place where tradition meets innovation. The crowd erupted in cheers, critics rushed to ask questions, investors handed me business cards. That night, I stood alone in my new restaurant space, raising a glass to my father's photo. You planned this, didn't you? I whispered. You knew they'd push me out. You knew I'd need to build something of my own. The next morning, Na sent a final text. Maria is selling Rossi's. They couldn't keep it going without your dad's recipes. 6 months later, Nuovo Rossi opened to incredible reviews. The line stretched around the block. Above the door, my father's lucky steel penny hung in a frame, watching over the crowded dining room. Maria and Leo disappeared from the restaurant world. Last I heard, they moved to Florida. But their failure wasn't my victory. My success was. Dad's notebook now sits in my office, filled with my own notes and new ideas. Late at night, I imagine him watching me cook, smiling as I teach my staff how to make the perfect marinara sauce. Not exactly the way he taught me, but close enough to keep his legacy alive. Before every dinner service, I touch the steel penny above the door and whisper, "Grazie, Papa." Because the best revenge isn't destroying someone else's dream. It's building something better of your own.